Awesome. Okay.
There you go.
All right. It's not playing for me. My apologies.
Oh boy.
I hope you know I never wanna see you go. I hope you know you've always been the one. I hope you know I'll never break your heart in two. I hope you know there's no one else like you. I hope you know there's no one else like you. Hi-yo, hey-yo, hey-yo.
Good morning or afternoon, wherever you're located right now. Thanks for coming today. Welcome to All My Relations. My name is Bernice UB Jordan. I am a citizen of the Fort Peck Sioux Nation, Public Health Program Manager at the Office of Tribal Public Health, United South and Eastern Tribes. Next slide. I'm going to read a couple audience participation tips. We are building a community. Please introduce yourself in the chat, select everyone, and let your fellow participants know your name, tribal, nation affiliation, job title, and organization. Important, we value your partnership. And most importantly, for our attendance records, we need accurate data. If you're able, please change your name on your Zoom as well. Everyone will be muted until the audience feedback portion of the hour. during that segment, use the raise my hand icon on the Zoom, and the host will unmute you and offer your reflection. You'll receive a link to the recording and presentation by the end of the week. Next slide. There are no relevant disclosures, financial relationships with ineligible companies for those involved with the ability to control the context of this activity. Also, please note, due to the transition of partners, we are temporarily pausing the offering of continuing education credits. Next slide. All right, I would like to introduce you to Holly Echohawk. Go ahead and take it away. It is all yours.
Hi there, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. It's wonderful to see all the different locations and tribes and urban Indian centers you all are from. We're really thrilled you're with us for part 2. So I just wanted to remind you that last month we presented information about the risks of trauma exposure in community work, and we talked about trauma-informed clinical supervision and why it matters. And we shared with you some key points about native trauma-informed, let me clarify that, native trauma-informed clinical supervision. And today we're segueing to part 2, and Dr. Vorpal and our good partner from C4 Innovations, Ken Craybill, will be talking about supervision as ceremony. So I will turn it over to Dr. Vorpal. And she's trying to get off mute.
Next slide. Oh yeah, there we are. So I'm from the Choctaw Nation of Oklahoma. I'm a mother of 3 boys. I'm a auntie, I'm a cousin, I'm a wife, and a clinical psychologist by training. And I'm so excited to be here with Holly and Ken today to talk about supervision as ceremony. Next slide. So just as we started earlier with the song and seeing the lovely visual of the mother and daughter passing down the tradition, you know, starting in a good way is something that we say in Native communities. And it can be a prayer, it can be a song. And this is an example of something that as a supervisor, as a front desk person, as an intake person, as a supervisee, can start their day off with an open heart and an open mind. So if you guys would join me in just, you know, sitting up straight, putting your feet on the ground, and taking a deep breath in. And then slowly letting it out. And I'm going to guide you through a prayer. And you can say this to yourself as I'm saying it. Guide me to be a patient companion, to listen with a heart as open as the sky. Grant me vision to see through this person's eyes, and eager ears to hear their story. Create a safe and open meadow in which we may walk together. Make a clear pool in which they may reflect. Guide me to find in them your beauty and wisdom, knowing your desire for them to be in harmony, healthy, loving, and strong. Let me honor and respect their choosing of their own path, and bless them to walk it freely. May I know again that although they and I are different, yet there is a peaceful place where we are one. Aho. Next slide. Ken?
Sure, I'll be happy to comment here, and please feel free to add. Thank you all for having me as a guest in this native space. I so much appreciate it. So we talk about trauma-informed care, trauma-responsive care, and you can see here that the elements of creating safety, trust, choice, collaboration, and empowerment are well known as the kind of the hallmark characteristics of what it means to be trauma informed. And so one of the ways that we can put that into action is actually by, I think, borrowing from motivational interviewing, which I think gives us some of the tools to embody and put into practice this mindset, this heart set, this spirit, if you will, of how we want to be with people. Both in clinical terms, but also in supervisory terms. And I recognize there's a distinction to be had there, but I'm a strong believer that the way those of us in supervisory roles treat and interact with supervisees should be quite parallel in almost all ways to how we would want those supervisees to interact with client populations. So we model what it is that we hope to see people put into practice. So I'm just going to briefly say that when we talk about this, we talk about partnering. And this imagery came up certainly in that prayer that just was offered by Jackie, read so beautifully. We partner with people, we recognize that they have expertise, we have expertise. We demonstrate profound respect for who they are as a person, for their own lived experience, their own learning. We encourage supervisees to co-create the supervisory experience. Maybe another way to put this would be to say that we do a lot more dancing and a lot less wrestling when it comes to our interactions. We also show an overall spirit of acceptance, of prizing people's inherent worth and potential, recognizing that people can and do grow. We provide accurate empathy and understanding. We seek to understand what people are experiencing. We support autonomy, latitude in decision making, an ability to try things, without fear of somehow being chided for doing so. We affirm people's strengths, all the good things about them. We also work with people from a sense of compassion. And I think compassion means a lot of, or can be thought of in a lot of different ways. But I think literally it means sort of working or walking alongside people in their difficulties, in their challenges. And so as a supervisor, when people are having difficulties or when they're grieving or when they're not sure what way to turn, rather than being a fix-it answer person right away, what we want to do is just acknowledge that and walk alongside people and then encourage them to come up with their own responses as to how to move forward. The last of these ideas is empowerment and helping people to realize and utilize their own strengths, their own motivations, their own resourcefulness, and their own autonomy. So I don't know how that fits and rests with you in terms of your own past supervisory experiences, but in my view, that's what makes that kind of creating that environment is what makes for a really for a really rich and thriving experience in supervision. And I'll just say parenthetically that yes, indeed, there are times when supervisors, because of their legal kind of responsibilities, need to take action in certain ways that would not be parallel to what happens in a clinical setting. But by and large, trauma responsive supervision looks a lot like this. So I'll invite you, Jackie, to elaborate. Yeah.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm gonna, can we stay at that? Yeah, thank you. And so I'm just gonna add native trauma responsive supervision to this slide. And because what we're talking about is a relationship. And the relationship is the utmost importance, and we're taking care of one another. So that's why we're building this safe environment, a trusting environment where we can let our guard down, where we can say, you know, I want to celebrate the success, or, you know, I think I blew it here, you know, or a tier, or you know, we're working in our communities or in other people's other communities with tribal people, and we may get triggered ourselves. We may, and it's that compassion that Ken was talking about. All of these elements that Ken was talking about is, you know, knowing when we lend a hand and that we create that container, and the goal, I think, of supervision for, and I'll speak for myself, is that this person that's my supervisee is going to take my place, is going to carry on, you know, and that is the goal. And I am going to learn as much from my supervisee as hopefully that I will be able to impart some knowledge to them. So let's go to the next slide. And so here are some ways that we as supervisors can do our best job. And so one of the things that we can do is prepare ourselves physically, emotionally, spiritually for our sessions. And I know life is rushed and we're moving from one thing to another, but that was the model of starting in a good way. It took us a couple of minutes to pause, to center ourselves, and to say, you know what, let me set aside that clutter and let me focus and actively listen to the person in front of me. And so then what we're doing is incorporating this self-awareness. You know, maybe I need to go get a drink of water, you know, because emotional work, we need hydration. Hydration is so key. And sometimes we forget to take care of ourselves. So that's something we can model to our supervisees, and to create a space that is quiet, that's centering. You know, maybe we start with breathing, or maybe we start with a pause. You know, there are so many different ways that we can start. But for us, we have to have that self-awareness of, what do I need? Do I need to lay down on the floor for a minute and stretch out? You know, do I need to call my sister and say, hey, you know, I'm having a hard time and I've got to get it together for the next meeting, you know, kind of thing. It can be anything, but it's that self-awareness that I want to show up for the person walking in the door. And so this come as you are presence, this is what I'm trying to, you know, help paint that picture. So next slide. Okay, is this still me? Oh, yes. So I would like to hear from you guys. Are there things that you do to prepare yourself for supervision? You know, I've given you some ideas, and I'm going to talk through some other ones too. But as I'm talking, please share your ideas, because I want to learn from you. We all can learn together. This is a community. And so one of the things that we can also do as supervisors is to look at the strengths of our supervisee, what they do well, you know, what they excel in, what they're drawn to, you know, and we can help build, you know, like balance their caseload, or help them structure their day. You know, maybe people are coming, like, you know, have been out doing visits or outreach or something like that, or they've had a very difficult interaction. We help them learn how to take care of themselves and space and pace themselves. And with things that they want to work on. What do you want to work on? Where are places that you want to grow? So we can help them find opportunities for training, for practice, for leadership roles. So in meetings, they can take a leadership role, and, you know, rather than micromanaging things like, you know, what are you doing at this time? You know, how are you doing that? it's giving them this interdependence, that listening to their ideas, to their wisdom, and walking beside them, as Ken talked about. And as we know, working in Indian country, there's an impact of trauma. And we may be trauma survivors, and we may be working with people that are,
Hello.
you
Excuse me.
know,
Can I get by? Thank
Oh.
you.
sorry. Thank you. Yeah. And so, it's understanding that, we carry things, and that's important to be able to talk about in our supervision sessions, as well as, I'm carrying this. I want to make sure this doesn't interfere with my work, and being able to share that story and to listen to the story without fixing. We're just witnessing. Okay, next. Anything in the chat of what people do? How can I support you? Yes, exactly. I love that. Anyone else? Nope. Okay, well, let's move on to the next slide. So let's talk about supervision as ceremony. And when I think about supervision as ceremony, it offers rhythm and relationship. We know what to expect. And so whether ceremony is how to enter a circle, or, if we go to church, how do we pray? If we are having a family dinner, do we offer thanks? It could be, a coming of age ceremony, that every time we know the routine, we know the process, we know the steps. It's not a surprise. And, and it's year to year, we're going to be practicing this. And so we're building that relationship of knowing what to expect. And that creates a space of healing, a space of reflection and accountability. And so this predictability, honors our Indigenous values and our shared intentions of we're working together, we're getting stronger together, we're holding space for growth and reciprocity. And ceremony, with its structure and intention, it also offers safety and trust. And safety and trust is so key in supervision. And so supervisors can walk alongside their supervisees, creating a space where we can share our burdens, and we can offer wisdom, and we can celebrate life. And so supervision can really mirror that sacred flow of ceremony. Next slide. So the structure creates safety. I was speaking about that, and I'll get it. So let's talk about specifics. So ceremonies have a clear arc. There's a beginning, an orientation, a gathering. There's a middle, that's active engagement piece. And then there's an ending, which is closure or reflection. And supervision can mirror this structure. So supervisees, when they walk in, they know what to expect and how to engage. So it could be beginning with a moment of gratitude to the people that we work with, to the work that we're doing, to our ancestors, to a new day. And we could then check in. How are you doing? How are things going for you? And then get specific with, let's talk about your cases, or your home visits, or how the intake process, or whatever this person is the person's encountering. And then you can focus maybe on 2 or 3 things specifically. So you're not just glossing over like a big umbrella, but you're really helping people think through different clinical situations that they're in. So you can provide a reflection and case consultation and guidance. And then, and so that's that middle part. That's the juicy part, right? And then we can close with an affirmation or how we're going to follow up or check in next time. What do we want on, what do we want to do the next meeting? What are our intentions? And so as you can see, this has a flow. It has, just like we know in ceremony, the beginning, the middle, and the end. What we don't know in ceremony is how it's going to impact us emotionally and mentally and spiritually each time we engage in that ceremony. But we know it's a safe place that we can lean into that. Ken, would you like to offer some examples?
Yeah, thank you very much, Jackie. So I think just to emphasize that I think by already you see that being in a supervisory session as that mentor, that supervisor means that you're all in. You're fully present, and hence the importance of preparing yourself and then being present throughout. And I do want to say here that the length of that time together is quite variable. It can be as short as 10 minutes maybe, but oftentimes in many settings it's closer to an hour. And the frequency, of course, can vary. And I want to recognize too that people work in very different settings with very different job aims, and so supervision is going to be adapted to all of that. But when I think about what goes in the middle, after the initial greeting, the centering, the checking in on the person's temperature emotionally, perhaps, we can start talking about things that are likely to be covered. And as Jackie said, not all of them, but some of them. So I will say, in many respects, it's helpful to start with creating an agenda, meaning what are we going to do together in our time together today? And to invite the supervisee to say what's important to you that we talk about, and for you to add what's important for me, or here's something that I want to make sure we come to. And then you get to help triage and figure out the timing so that there's an ability to connect around whatever the topics of utmost importance are that day. Um, Hopefully the person you're supervising has a job description and responsibilities, and so referencing that regularly, sort of seeing how that's going, what's working, what's not working so well, and using that as a launching pad for talking about that. Um, we can certainly ask for updates when there's a longitudinal kind of project that somebody's working on. How's it going? What are the updates that you want to offer? Where are the snags? Where do we want to put our energies? How can I help you with that? Um, so part of supervision, of course, is identifying concerns and obstacles, but hopefully that's not the only thing that we're focusing on. Hopefully it's also on what's going well? What are you doing well? Where do you feel like you're being able to put your best energies and and help this process along? Um, it might be an identification of opportunities to collaborate with other staff, with other agencies, even with other groups. And so recognizing that oftentimes in clinical work, it's kind of lonely because we feel like we're on our own, having to take responsibility for doing whatever we're doing. And again, where might you find a connection with others to get help? Certainly talking about logistics and all of that, following up on the person's professional activities, their development activities, because so much of supervision, um, for supervisees to feel like it's valuable is to have supervisors who help them find ways to grow and identify ways to develop their strengths even more so. I do think that asking about how's it going with your own well-being, your own personal well-being, your own self-care, if you will, And part of this is around attention, as Jackie said, to the workload. Maybe it's too much right now. Maybe it's too heavy. Maybe, asking about, whether there's kind of an edging towards high stress, burnout potential, just talking out loud about that. Talking about a healthy work-life balance, however that gets defined. And in all of this, there's feedback, right, about the supervisee's work performance. And I know you all know this, but we want to do that on a routine basis in a non-threatening way where there's no surprises and it's just part of the natural conversation. And maybe it's such as we say, would it be all right if I give you a little feedback about this particular interaction you had and alternative ways that you might approach that? Or can I give you some ideas about as you think about meeting with this next client, what you might be considering? Just offering that in a user-friendly way. And then sometimes saying, I think I'd recommend that you make a shift in your attitude or in your approach here, that kind of thing. There are some things that I think also are not covered every session or regularly, but what about reviewing the job description to make sure it still reflects the consistency and is consistent with the actual work and organizational needs? Maybe completing an annual evaluation and related forms so the supervisee can get formal feedback. But again, there should be no surprises. And then I also think it's really important to evaluate the supervisory relationship and ask to have a conversation about how do you think it's going? What's working? What's not? How can we improve upon it? These kinds of things. So I'll leave it there. That's a lot of talking, a lot of points, but what's in the middle can be, rather than a muddle, it should be something that has a sense of direction and clarity to it.
Next slide. So as Ken is talking, the supervisor's role, he's emphasizing that we're modeling balance and boundaries. So we can see ourselves as a type of ceremonial guide, as a holding container. So we can model vulnerability ourselves through our stories, reflecting, things that we have been through and how we have set limits in those situations. We've named the emotion, and that, by doing this, we can offer the opportunity for them to feel safe enough to bring these things into the room as well. And so we also need to model self-care. And because if we're not taking care of ourselves and we're checking in with them about taking care of themselves, it's incongruent. So this is where we try to walk our talk the best that we can do. And so modeling self-care can be giving permission to rest, giving permission to pace yourself, giving permission to, to ask questions, to say, this is what I need for support. So this also helps us create boundaries, like Ken was talking about. Is this working for you? Is there another way we could be doing supervision that would fit better with, with your learning style? And so by doing that, we can work together in a better way. And so the most important piece here is providing that consistent presence, the emotional presence, the spiritual presence, and the physical presence. So it's all of these things together that we are really with that person so that we can celebrate their successes and we can also connect with them in the struggle, naming both with respect. And we can do this in the office and we can do this outside of the office. You know, it could be, you know, taking a walk outside and talking about what's going on with that person and needing to get that sensory information or get their senses activated by the beautiful environment that's around them. Whether you are surrounded by water, the ocean, or mountains, or a forest, all of that is healing. And we can do that in conjunction with water, drinking water. We could also prepare some tea in the moments of preparing the tea. That is pause time. That's connection time. And so there are all of these things that we can do as supervisors that help connect us to our place, to the land for co-regulation. And this reminds us that we're not alone. You know, we have our everything around us we're connected to, we're interconnected to. And so sometimes we just need to step outside and pause and take a deep breath and connect to what's around us, because there may be a lot of stress and chaos and trauma that we're trying to process through. So next slide. So we're gonna ask you to do a poll so we have a good idea of, you know, where you guys are at with, do you have a supervisor and is it a clinical supervisor? So if you would answer this poll, Lee is going to share the results with us. Is that correct, Lee?
Yep, I can share that once folks are doing that. Also, I know if you can't use the link that I've placed in the chat, please feel free to just add your comments in the chat here in the meeting and we'll gather all of them together. Just wanted to make it available for folks who might not be able to access the website that I put in the chat. But if you can, feel free to grab that link.
Okay, so the first question is, do you have a supervisor that you meet with on a regular basis? And the second one is, do you have access to a clinical supervisor who you can suggest ways to increase client motivation, treatment, planning to address native trauma, and understand your trauma exposure? Okay.
Awesome. I'm
Thank you.
seeing some responses in the chat. Great to see folks saying yes, or that they do meet sometimes. We'll go to question 2. You can put it in the chat. I'm appreciating people who've already gone on to that, but just to answer number 1, looking at our results, Jackie, we've got about 76% of the people who have answered say yes, they do have a supervisor that they meet with on a regular scheduled basis. And then we've got about 24% of folks who say no, they do not have one.
Okay, that is really helpful because we are going to talk later on about what you can do to find support if you don't have a clinical supervisor. Okay, so thank you guys for participating. That is very helpful. So let's move on to the next slide. Ken?
I think we have one more poll question, do we not? Or did I?
Oh,
miss it?
Yes.
oh yeah. Oh,
Correct,
so
Ken.
sorry. Sorry.
No worries. I'm seeing people answer in the chat. I appreciate both answers. And then also we have the link. The link should open up the second question. Do you have access to a clinical supervisor who can suggest ways to increase client motivation, treatment planning, to address native trauma, and understand your trauma exposure? We've got about 50-50 right now in terms of responses that we're seeing from folks. I think it really is a good 53 to 47%. So we're seeing pretty much equal responses, Jackie, on both of those questions.
Great. I
And-
love Deborah says, yes, I have a team, exclamation point. It's like, yes, it's so important. Okay. Unfortunately, having one doesn't always mean they align consistently. Thank you for bringing up that point, Karen. That's so true. Yes.
Yeah, our
All
final
right.
response is 56% say yes and 44% say no. So we're getting really an even amount on both of those.
All right, shall we move ahead? So we've prepared a few slides here that are actually oriented towards ways that supervisees can help supervisees co-create supervision, if you will, and ensure that supervisees don't feel like supervision is just being done to them, but that it's being done in a kind of a partnering kind of way. And so I literally feel like as a supervisor, if I had a list of things that I'd want to encourage supervisees to do, I'd hand them a list, and we're actually going to provide something like that for you. So we're just going to touch on these lightly, but the first is related to the poll and identify who can clinically guide you. And I want to be clear here, this doesn't mean you have to be a clinician to have somebody clinically guide you. Maybe other language might be who can just provide helpful feedback and who can also be somebody that can talk things through with you. But somebody who does more than signs a timesheet and does scheduling. And I will say for those of you without supervisors who are designated, I think often people on their own go find somebody, a peer, or maybe even somebody outside the agency. But it's really important and valuable to have somebody who you can talk to in a patient kind of way about what's happening. Recognize that a supervisor's foremost responsibility is to ensure that the clients and patients are receiving high quality care. So one of the things I find really helpful about this commentary is that if I'm going to give some feedback or do some redirection for somebody as a supervisor, I know that I'm a person who can be a bit of a people pleaser, and I don't want to offend people and all of that stuff. And I'm imagining there's others like that. Um, if I remember that this is all about client care, that's what this is all about. And yes, we pay attention to the supervisee, but the end result is what's happening in that interaction. Then it makes it easier for me to recognize that this is necessary to give constructive feedback to people. Request if you're not meeting on a scheduled one-to-one basis that maybe you do. I know there are a lot of supervisors who say, well, I have an open door policy. A person can come to me anytime. And there's some value in that, certainly. But there is also something, going back to the sense of safety and structure, predictability, of having a time set aside by the supervisor where a person knows they can come and have the conversations that are necessary. Agree upon the format and expectations for those sessions. Again, you hopefully will be invited directly to say what's important to you that we discussed today. But if it's not happening, then I highly recommend you say, these are some things that I'd like to make sure we talk about. Ask directly for what you need, including how you will know how well you're doing. Next slide, please. Back to you, Jackie.
Okay. And so the trust factor that we talked about before allows the environment for supervisees to bring up awkward and thorny issues. That's to be expected. As a supervisee, you're not supposed to know everything. You're learning. You know, this is new for you. And so supervisors like to hear, well, I don't know if it's like, but they expect to hear these things, right? So I think it's more of a warning sign or a red flag if I'm like, everything is great. Bringing up these awkward, thorny issues is important because then we can work through them together. Hear what you're thinking, what your ideas are, because sometimes a lot of times actually supervisees know exactly how to proceed. They just need that confidence behind them. And so that is very important. And as Ken talked about, inquire about how you can improve your performance, or what can I do better? How am I doing? You know, if you're wanting to kind of know, you know, where am I at here? You know, I'm really invested in doing well. So, and then inform your supervisor how you learn most effectively. And I talked about that a little bit earlier. You know, is it reading? Is it listening? Is it demonstration? Is it hands-on? You know, and with that, you know, your supervisor, the two of you guys can work together in providing, you know, what's going to be best for you. And so then this becomes reciprocity rather than one directional, like a downward directional. So there's this mutual understanding, and I want feedback as a supervisor too. How am I doing? And it's important for me to be able to listen to that and take that in as a model. Next slide.
So a few more things. When you are discussing specific clinical cases, for example, I certainly recommend only choosing one or two and going deep rather than just sort of glossing over all of them. I do recognize that sometimes that's necessary, but hopefully there are times you can also sort of get to a deeper level. Ask your supervisor to assist you in monitoring your own stress level, your own trauma exposure in the work, your own secondary trauma that you might be experiencing, and helping you, encouraging you to find ways to enhance your self-care, both on the job and, of course, outside of work as well. Discuss, as mentioned before, how the supervisory relationship is working, both of you. And you can give feedback to a supervisor, presuming that they're receptive to that. I also recommend keeping a written log. It doesn't have to be lengthy, but things you want to remember that came out of the conversation you had in the session, but also to follow up on things that you maybe agreed to do or you want to work on or plan for. And as I love what you emphasized, Jackie, recognize that you too someday will become a supervisor potentially. And it's helpful just to learn from the experience of being a supervisee, to know what it's like to be on the one side of that, and be able to occupy both chairs at some point. And the last thing I want to say is it was mentioned in a slide before, but I used to give workshops, and I titled them "The Joy of Supervision." That was a riff on the joy of cooking. But I want to say that the supervisory relationship can be, and hopefully will be, a highlight for both you as a supervisor and the supervisee in the course of your work, or at least something that isn't something to be dreaded or be afraid of. And so I encourage you to bring joyfulness to all of this, because it takes us back to the values that drive us all, right, to do the work that we do. Next slide, please.
Yes, Ken, thank you for saying that. And before I talk about the stories as medicine, is, you know, in my lifetime, I've had some really great supervisors and not so great supervisors. And I've had supervisors who they were wonderful and they helped me along a lot. And some I've kept in touch with and some I haven't, even if it was a good relationship. And then there are these lifelong mentors. And I think in Indian country, I'm going to make a generalization here, that really it's those lifelong mentorships, that even if there is time and space that you haven't talked to that person, it's like coming home again when you see them, or when their name comes across, and it's like, oh, I've got to call them, I've got to connect with them again. So, you know, that's the hope, but it doesn't always work out that way. And so then we may need to seek that support in other ways. But let's look at stories as medicine. It is so important that we honor stories of secondary and compassion trauma. We don't know what's going to walk through our door or what door we're going to walk through, what we will see or experience in any given day. And we will have these experiences. And as a supervisor, it's so important to hold those stories and to listen. And it's not to fix, but when a supervisee comes in and speaks about this grief, this overwhelm, this is part of our identity. This is part of how we cope, of how we connect, and it's sacred. And so as supervisors, we witness, we listen, these stories will create a restorative factor of identity, of culture, of coherence, making sense of what's going on. And as a supervisor, we too hold this secondary compassion trauma. And we recognize this is real and it's meaningful and it has a place and we need to make space for it. And storytelling is a form of releasing and meaning making. And so it grounds us in culture and our practice of being stable, of being able to express our emotions and not feel like we're taken over by them. Storytelling is medicine. It connects us to the problem, to the meaning, to our culture. And like I said, it's part of our identity. And as I have on this slide, it's a neuro decolonizing tool, so it brings us resilience. It brings us healing and connection. And so it's creating space for that. That is as important as anything else we're going to be, talking about with our supervisees and as a supervisee, and so this is important whether we're working with clients, whether we're doing home visits, doing intakes, phone calls, we're the reception person, we're doing outreach or community work. Our stories are our medicine. And as a team, we can work together and heal together. And next slide.
That was fabulous, Jackie. And just as a time check, you have fabulous 4 more slides in just a few minutes.
Okay, I'll be quick.
Important.
Yes, yeah. So with that, right, of sharing and honoring our own, we have a picture of a burden basket here. And this is an Apache burden basket. And what I was told when I was working in San Carlos Apache is that, there's a ceremony attached to it, but what also you can hang it at the door and leave your burdens and worries there for our ancestors and our Creator to carry them for us and to show us the way. And so I think that's really important that we see that we have all of these kinds of things in our culture that can ground us and to help us cope. And so when we are, hearing and experiencing these really heavy things, it's important to practice compassionate detachment, that we're walking alongside. We're not carrying the pain. We're respecting the other person's power to heal. We're standing with them in the loving presence without losing ourselves. And so as we practice this, we're emotionally present, but we don't carry that pain. And this is so important, not only in this supervisory session, but in our life when we are interacting, in our role at work. And so we're honoring our supervisees' agency. We support their healing. We're not merging with them or rescuing them. We're reflecting back their strength and their resilience. And we also know our limits, and we're helping them learn their limits so they practice self-care. They're grounding, they have peer support, they have clinical support, they have family support, they have community support, emotional safety. So this is ceremony. This teaches us to witness without pain, without absorbing it, to hold space, not to hold the wound. Next slide. And so how we can heal can be land-based, right? Nature-based. I talked about walking and talking. Nature can be our co-regulator, because it just goes in every part of our fiber. We carry that with us. And think of a mountain, the quiet strength of a mountain, the awe that we experience. So it doesn't always have to be talking. It can be sharing space. Think of the ocean, the tide coming in and going out, and that calm that washes over us. So these are things that our environment, that our land gives to us all the time. So to quote Michael Yellowbird, the land remembers what we forget. And when we return to her, we remember too. Next slide. So I don't have time to go into this, but please reach out to me to create your own supervisory opportunities. In Massachusetts, we've created a Native Wellness Providers monthly meeting, and it has been so powerful. With the Society of Indian Psychologists, this is a program that we offer. And you can connect with your community providers, with your peers, with local and national organizations. You can start it up with other people. But know that, if you're like, I need this, listen to that. When I worked at the Urban Center, there was nobody to supervise me. So I reached out to my IHS area psychologist, and she was gracious enough to spend time with me and to set up a time. Next slide, please. So just to recap everything that we've been talking about, supervision is like ceremony. It offers a structure, a rhythm. It's relational. It creates safety. It centers on healing, not just performance. And supervisors can hold space with presence and accountability. We can honor stories as sacred medicine while practicing our detached compassion. We can engage in land-based practices and storytelling to restore our balance. We can walk beside, not ahead, grounded in our native wisdom and our community resilience. So when we supervise as ceremony, we create space and strength to rise, for burdens to be shared, for the culture to lead the way. This is how we sustain our people, ourselves, and the long road ahead of us. Thank you.
That was really fabulous, Dr. Vorpal and Ken. And that closes our part two. We thought it was really important to have two of our sessions focus on supervision, or what we like to call it more as coaching and mentoring. So that was really wonderful, and we thank you all. We should just because of time skip the uh, audience feedback section. Sorry, Olivia. I know you're ready to do that. There's so many wonderful comments in the chat. And before we close with our closing video, I just there are quite a few Alaska people on the call, and I just wanted to acknowledge the trauma and support given to the Alaska Native communities that were in the path of the typhoon in Western Alaska. And there are hundreds and hundreds of Alaska Native people that have been displaced from their homes to Bethel and Anchorage. And I know that all of the Alaskan Native people and representatives on the call, that is very close to your heart every day, and we want to acknowledge that. So we'll go ahead and move. Let's see what the next slide is. Lee, please. And again, we're a partnership between 3 organizations. Our latest organization is the based in the University of Arizona, the American Indian Alaska Native Behavioral Health Center of Excellence, also referred to as 7 Generations. So we're going to go ahead and move to our closing video, and I just want to say 2 things. One is next month, as usual, our November session is an open discussion with you all. And we take your feedback and we build that into our 2026 series, which will start in January. And we will also have our continuing education credit back up and running for January for 2026. And then this video, the next slide, Lee. Such joy. You'll appreciate this. These 3 young ladies. And it's a reminder of who we work for, of course, the children and families all across Indian country. And with that, we will say have a Native Brilliant Day and enjoy this.
Fairhead Sisters singing a song. Why did you have to call when you know that I'm barely over you? You keep playing these games 'cause you know that I'm missing you. Hey oh, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey. Why did you have to call when you know that I'm barely over you? You keep playing these games 'cause you know that I'm missing you. Hey oh, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey, hey oh, hey. Why did you have to call when you know that I'm barely over you? You keep playing these games 'cause you know that I'm missing you. Hey oh, hey oh, hey oh.
I love that video. And those, when you first look at this, you think, oh, these are just kids, but they're Native kids, and they're singing a song about their future relationships. And our job collectively is to help them be healthy, help them have positive, healthy relationships, and have a healthy family and a fabulous, brilliant future. So thank you all for joining us today. We'll see you next month. And again, enjoy your native brilliance that you hold and that your community holds. See you next time.